Hello everyone, and welcome to the second tutorial in MASH. This time we'll be using the type node to create any kind of text that will be animated. We'll be looking at how to use different offsets to create more natural looking models. We'll use falloffs to hide or animate changes in our models. And we can use the placer node and world node to create a good looking environment. We can also use textures that will help us basically place our nodes wherever we like. So with that being said, let's get started. Alright, I'm going to change the topic a bit and then we'll go back to do some procedural modeling. But for now, I would like to show you something that was added into I think Maya 2016, which is the new text tool, which is also connected to Mesh, and it's very powerful. So I thought I would show you how this works. So the icon's over here, or you can go to create text and create a text. What it will do is create a text for you, and at first we'll open up this UI in your attribute editor. And it will allow you to choose, let's say, the font you would like to use, or anything just like you would find in any text setup, such as Photoshop or Illustrator and so on. You could also decide if it's going to be center to world or left or right. Depends on what you're going to use. We can as well decide the position of the entire text, specific letters, how close or how far they are, and so on. So we're going to go back to the edit here and turn that off. So there's a lot of power here in just deciding on your text. So in this case, I'm just going to write Mesh. I hate when it does this. Alright. Come on. You gotta leave your mouse in here, otherwise it's not gonna type. There we go. And notice that everything's gone awry, so we're just gonna see if we can just reposition these guys a bit. There we go. Now that we have our letters, we can go ahead and change a few of the generation. There's a generator from names, seconds, random, so on. So we can, let's see, random. So what the generator is going to do is actually kind of cool. It's going to run through those letters until, if we put that on random, let's say from name, number, so we can have a counter like that. You could write a script, animation text, which is where we are right now. There's a lot of things we can do with this, including writing text and so on. So I'm just going to leave that off for now and move on to the next thing, geometry. So geometry will allow you to change many things in the geometry, starting with its density, like how much data is in each section. So I'm going to leave that at 4. Closest angle, you can turn that on and see what that does. So it will, instead of having a smooth edge here, you can change all of that. We can also change our extrusions. We can basically create other types of extrusions, I think. Not sure why that's not there we go. So we have to add the faces in there. There we go. We can basically up our meshes behavior so they are cleaner. We could add bevel profiles, so enable bevel profiles. So now we can basically rebuild the profile. So let's say we have a stepped profile like that, something like that, or like that. There's a lot of power here. You can model as your heart contents, like so. That's pretty cool. I kind of like that. Let's move on. So that's the geometry. We can go to texturing. We can bring in like a shader that we can use. You could also use different types of shaders, including specialty shaders themselves. Alright, animation. Animation's awesome here. For example, I'm going to make these kind of jump up and down. 120 frames should be enough. I'm just going to press animate. And once I've turned on the animation, you'll see nothing really happens. Let me just turn this off here. What I need to do is set a key. So I'm going to set a key, and notice that in your timeline you don't see anything. Why? Is because Maya needs to know that you've selected the type animation node. So to do that, just press select here and you'll see your key in your timeline. So I'm going to go to frame 25. And I'm going to have my text translate on the Y. Let's see, center world line. Okay, we'll leave it at center. Let's make this go up 20 units. All right, so now there's an offset, so it's going to go up 20 units. All right. Then at frame 50, we want this back down at 0, like so. So it's going to go. All right. So now I want this to do it a little quicker. So animation pivots. Let's see what we got here. We got the delay. We can just knock down the amount of delay. So as it goes up and goes down, we can remove something like that. Yeah, you could play around with this and get it nice. Let's say we want to kind of add a bounce. So I'm just gonna go over here to frame 60, and we want to set a key. Just set a key there, set a key here, and set a key here. And I'll open my animation editor, the animation graph editor, and I will choose the position Y and focus in. And again, these are all pretty much standard animation practices. We don't really need too much here. Let's see, I'm going to do that and move it up. And then I'm going to grab these guys and make them linear. Should actually add a key so we can grab our move. Where's my insert key? Shift. Just insert my key there. I think it's with Alt. Little mouse button. One of these. There we go. Little mouse button was, and left the tool again by pressing Q. Move that up, and then grab these two and make them linears. Alright, so that should go blah 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 blah. Let me break the tangents on this so we can grab that. Do that, so we break the tangents. Let's make it a weighted curve. There we go. Something like this. Should be fairly cool. Alright, let's see the animation. Dum, 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 dum. Of course, we need to work on this, but this gives you a good idea of what we can do. Yep. So that's Mesh and text. We can actually start mixing these together, but all in all, I think this is fairly straightforward, and I'll let you guys play with it. Yeah, cool. Anyway. When we come back, we'll look at building a brick wall using a mesh network. Alright, so we're back to procedural modeling, and this time we're going to look at bricks, how we can kind of lay bricks really quickly using everything that we've learned so far. So I'm going to grab all these bricks and I'm going to create a mesh network, and I'm just going to open this thing here and my attribute editor. Actually, you know what, we're going to use the new feature in Maya 2018, which is workspaces, and I'm going to just make this workspace a little more friendly. I do not need the help line, so I'm going to remove my help line and remove my command line for this, just because I don't need it. I actually, let's see, command line. I don't need my timeline either, or for this. All right, okay, so we're good because we have this for the timeline. All right, so we got the mesh network. Actually, you know what? I'm going to bring the timeline in just so you could see like a couple of cool things. I don't want this to dock all the way at the bottom. I just want it here. There we go. That makes more sense. Alright, so in this new workspace, we basically got an attribute editor, modeling editor, which I don't want. Goodbye. Yeah, just a channel box and attribute editor, and over here we got an outliner. And now all we need to do is open our mesh editor, and I'm going to dock that here. There we go. I'm kind of happy with this. Actually, do I want to dock it that way? Can I dock it together with the attribute editor? It's fine the way it is. Okay. Anyway, so we got this distribute node, and yeah, you're right. Sorry about this, guys and girls. I just want to kind of make this comfortable. There we go. That's probably going to be better. Cool. All right. So back to this. I do not need in this case the distance, and I don't need too much to distribute. I just need one brick. Now the reason I just need one brick is that I'm going to use actually no, let's see, I just need the one brick, and instead of creating a distance and then filling that gap, I'm going to use one of the other nodes, which we already came across, and that is the replicator node, to kind of do the same thing. Just the replicator, I could tell it to go, let's say, create 3 of these. Now I'm going to get 3 blocks. And instead of on the Z, we're just going to tell it to do it on the X distance. So in this case, we want just a distance of 3. So we get exactly the 3 nodes, or actually we want 2. No, 3 should be good. So if I put 2 of them like that, we get the exactly 3 that we had before. So I'm just gonna, I know that I'm gonna need 36 of these to create for later. Actually, let's just start off with 12. I think 12 is a good number. So I have 12, and notice they're all the same object. And they just in one row. So let's go ahead and add another row. So right now I'm using one replicator to replicate my geo along the X. But if I try to do the same on the same replicator to do it on the Y, what's going to happen is just going to offset him up in a stair-like manner, which could be good if that's what I wanted, but not in this case. Okay, if I was making stairs, that's how I'd go about it, but that's not what I'm making. We probably could make stairs later on. I'll show you how. Anyway, with that being said, let's add another replicator. This time I'm going to do it from this interface over here. So I'm going to press the little plus button, go down to the replicator, and this time we are going to zero out here and put 1 over there, and then we should be, because I know that the brick has got a distance of 1, I'm just going to make this about 4 units high. So now I have a wall that's 4 units high, or 7 bricks high, and 12 bricks along. So that's pretty cool. The replicator also has a nice feature that's called stagger, and we can now go and play around with the stagger and see if we can make it stagger in a certain direction. So that's what I'm going to try do. We actually have pattern for that. Let's try pattern on the X. There we go. We can pattern, have this slide over just to about 1.5, because that's what we want. And now we have a brick wall. Pretty nifty. Alright, so the only thing that's left for us is now to have those 3 types of bricks instead of the same type. For that, we're going to need an ID node. So why do we need an ID node? As you recall, I was showing you before on the repo node, I basically have, when I created my mesh network, it's brought in these 3 bricks, A, B, and C. But it's not just throwing them in here because it doesn't know how to call up these numbers like 0, 1, and 2. To do that, we actually have to give each one, even though they have an ID, is to tell mesh to call up those IDs. So I'm just going to go here and go look for IDs, and there it is. And the minute I throw it on, you will see that we'll get an ID. All 3 of these will now appear, and I can actually up the number, and we'll just go linearly. So we just want the 3, so it would be 0, 1, and 2. We actually need 0, 1, 2. So yeah, we need 3 of these, and then we could say randomize that, so it will randomize it, or we can say cycle it, or fixed, so I can say only 3, only 2, only 0, only 1. Alright, but I'm just going to put randomize. Let's see what else we can do here. Falloff, we can create a falloff object, which we will talk about in a next video probably. Alright, so let's say I still want to create some more iterations. Well, what I could do is, in this case, add, let's say, some color variation. We can do that in Arnold very easily, but in this case we're going to use mesh to do that. So I'm just going to add a color node, and you'll notice everything goes white. What I can do is just call up that same texture, or make this like so. Just gray. Actually, I'm just going to call up the same texture. So let's see, here, I think it was that one. Let's see if we can find a different one. Let's do this one. Yeah, it didn't work very well. It's because it creates vertex information to do this, and then we can basically just offset the color or the randomization of the values here, so we can make it a very colorful thing. Normal, additive. Yeah, we can pretty much play with its behavior. I'm happy with this. Let's move on. We could also add a offset to kind of offset these, and I kind of showed you what it was doing before, but this time we're going to use it to kind of flip some of these guys around. So I'm going to use an offset and put it at, let's say for now, 90. So you can see that all offsets it at 90, but I want to like stagger this so that's not all of them in one go. So I'm going to use a map. For that we just need a noise, and I'm going to right click here and go use projection, create projection. So it creates a projection, and then we can grab the projection over here. There's actually a widget for it. Bring it up and scale it up like so and move it over. But it's just not working as well as we would hope. And the reason is because if we look at the actual texture, you see there's grays in it, and we don't want grays. So again, we're gonna just turn down this number here and just really go insane with the number and the aptitude. So now it's full white and full black. And then we can just change the frequency like so. And so now you can see some of them are straight and some of them are turned. I can invert the colors. Did that do anything? I don't think so. Let's try scaling this up, bringing that down. Alright, so that's pretty much it. The next thing we want to do is go back to the offset. Instead of 90 degrees, let's make this 360. Oh no, actually we want 180. Alright, so now we have a little more breakage in the way that things are working because we have kind of manipulated this. Now notice sometimes one or two of them are going to just pop. It's just because they're sitting on an in-between a white and gray, white and black, so it's kind of a gray pixel, and we'll do that. But we can get pretty nice effects with this. And of course, the larger I go or the smaller I go, there should be more randomization. So that's more or less it for this wall. We're 11 minutes in, so I'm a little bit over on this section. In the next video, we are going to look at some other aspects of mesh. So I'll see you in the next section. Alright, so in the previous video we kind of looked at setting up this wall. There's a lot more that we can do with it. I actually built tiled roofs and stuff like that. And of course, the more options you have for bricks, you can go ahead and change it. I could even go and like scale some of these down a bit, so you get like little breaks in the wall stuff. You know, it's just never ending what you can do with it. But let's say in this case, I want to add an option to kind of hide some of these guys interactively, and mesh actually gives us that option. So we are just gonna go over here, and just to change things up, we are going to look for a visibility node, and the visibility node is very, very cool because what it will let us do is actually hide parts of this mesh. So firstly I need to load up the helper, like this mesh. So I'm going to grab, actually I don't need that. I need to just create a falloff object. So I'm going to go to the falloff object and right click and create, and immediately you'll see that we get this ball, and whatever's inside of the ball is going to show up. Now of course I can double click on the falloff object, and you'll see here in the outliner I got the falloff object as well, so I can grab it from the outliner. And I could invert it, so now if I move along the wall, I could have that be created. That is massively cool. So let's say you want to create a gash in the wall, we can do that. We can scale this up or down. So we can create a gash in the wall or from the top. And this is procedurally created. We can actually, you know, create different walls this way and break up, you know, parts of the wall. In this case, we are using this as a as something that shows or hides different objects. But we could also add, let's say, a randomize node. All right, so that's going to randomize, and I'll create a falloff object for this as well. And I don't want to randomize this on that, but I do want to randomize, let's say, on some of the rotations. So now I could use this falloff object, and this time I'll make a cube out of it. So it's just a cube. And we can move this cube to where we want it, and sort of like that. And let's say everything that's inside of it's going to have this falloff. So now wherever I put this falloff, I can have this randomization. Sorry, we need to grab the falloff object. You should name these, of course. Okay, so we can squeeze that like that and like that. There we go. So these falloff objects will give you a lot of power to kind of randomize certain behaviors. So I can again go to some of the randomization here. Let's also give a little bit of scale. Let's say uniform. Stagger, we can stagger some stuff. I mean, there's, you know, a lot of play here. So I'm going to get rid of the uniform scale. I think I messed it up. There we go. So we can randomize the scale of this, and then let's say grab the bricks, just scale them down a bit. Again, it's all a matter of playing with it to get what you want. Alright, with that being said, I want to go ahead and show you some other uses that we can use mesh in modeling, and then I'm going to show you something really cool, which is some ways of other ways of distributing your objects along a surface that will give you a lot of power in the future. So let's go have a look at that fairly quickly. So I'll see you in the next segment. Alright, so in the previous video we looked at some falloff objects, and this one we're going to go back to distributing objects on surfaces. So we're going to look at some curves and some selection sets in this little video, and in the next one we're going to look at distributing different objects in different ways on surfaces in the next. So that being said, let's just jump into it. So let's pimp out this hat. I'm going to add some, I don't know, rivets or sequences or something onto this. So first, what we want to do is create a curve. Yes, let's create a curve. So I already have the selection made here. I'm actually going to preemptive do something. I'm going to create a selection set because we're going to use it later. To do that, you just go to Create, Sets, Quick Selection Set. You should name this whatever, but I'm just going to leave it set for now. And we'll create this little selection set, which is basically each and every curve along there. Alright, so we're going to just save that for now. We're going to use it later. Alright, with that being said, let's go here, select members. There we go. That's, by the way, a very fast way to select stuff. So if you save it and then you go select members, you can select objects or components. Alright, so I got this. I'm going to go to Modify. I'm going to go to Convert, and we're going to go to Poly Edges to Curves, and we're going to open the options. I'm just going to reset it and bring it in. What you want to do is change the options over here to linear, because by default it's set to cubic. So we're going to go Create, and it's going to create this curve right here. Alright, so along this curve we want to distribute some rivets. So let's just create a sphere. Let's zoom in, move, and let's delete half of it by doing that. That shell, and I'm just gonna grab this and scale it down, and let's say bring this up a bit, something like so, and there we go, we got our rivet. Yeah, it's the most amazing model you've ever seen. Alright, so we're happy with this. It's not the best, but it is what it is. Now let's just go create a mesh network. So create mesh network, come up here. We are not going to use the distribute node for this because if I just put it on the surface, I won't be able to control where it goes. But what I can do is, firstly, we'll leave the 10, but I'm going to tell it to go to 0 here. This is very important, otherwise it's going to be offset when we run this with the curve. So 0 that out on all of these, should be 0, and have, you know, as many as you need. It is creating more of them, they're just now at 0. So if I pull that out, you'll see there's more. So we're at 0 distance. I'm just going to add a curve to that. Yep. And what I need to do is drag, middle mouse drag my curve in here. If I just undo that or remove this, yeah, unmove. If I grab the curve first and then control select my mesh and then add the curve, it's going to add the curve automatically, and you will see that we have the 20 odd ones along the curve. Now there's animation on it because by default animation's on. We just need to turn all the animation off so it's sitting in the correct position, and then we're going to go ignore step, so it's going to throw these on top. Now all I need to do is grab my sphere and scale it down so it sits nicely along the top there. Right now it's not facing in the correct direction, so we're just gonna rotate that and maybe scale it up a bit, and then in the distribute node we can just knock down a few of these, and voila, we have those nicely set. Cool. Now let's create a selection set. I'm just gonna create a selection set of these guys all the way here, and then go over there and do that, and let's create a selection set. So create selection set. So this is our second selection set, and this time alright, so I am just going to create another object. So we're going to use, let's say, these weird shapes over here. Let's see what we can do with this. Let's just reduce quads, reduce the radius a bit, and let's see, what else do we have here? Nothing. Cubic. Yeah, let's have these little diamond things on it, and just up the subdivisions. No, that's fine. All right, so I'm going to use create another mesh network. So we're going to go create mesh network. So we have a new mesh network. Again, I'm going to get rid of that. Let's make about 20 of those, and instead of having this linear, I'm going to go down to mesh, and now I can just have it driven by a selection set. So I could grab my new selection set and just drag that into there, and voila, I have these on the top of my hat here. So of course we can just distribute those very nicely. You could also go flood mesh, but that's not going to help us any. Alright, so let's have a look at a few things that might be an issue. Firstly, the ones that are on a curve, if I decide to go change something in the hat, let's say, for example, just this, and I move it up and down, you can see that it's live. It will continue to move with the mesh. But unlike the mesh, the sequences aren't going to move, and the reason is that the sequences are being driven by a selection set. It's just by the vertices, and it doesn't know to update those vertices. So to update those vertices, as you recall, we changed this from linear to mesh to get to the selection set option. But you'll see there's also an input mesh. So I could grab the hat, drag that into the input mesh. So now that's driving, that's going to drive those things as well. So if I grab this now, that becomes live. And yeah, so that's creating, sort of using history to control where we have an object on like sequences on our hat here, or actually using vertices to kind of set up these little diamond things. All right, in the next video we'll look at actually populating a surface with different types of objects. This is very cool, and you should actually enjoy this very much. So we'll see you soon. Alrighty, here we are once again, and in this time we are going to look at the placer node. This is another way to kind of scatter meshes around an object. This time we'll be kind of populating our area with these plants. So I'm just going to grab these. I kind of gave them each one a kind of ID, so it'll be easy for me to choose them. We are going to go to the mesh network, which is under animation, yep. And we're going to open the properties, and I'm going to make sure that this time it's set to instance. Now it's not that it's not making sort of an instance anyway, but when we set it to instance, when we use certain tools, it's going to just work better. So we're going to do that and apply. So it's going to do that. We don't need any of that because we will be using this thing. All right. So immediately as I start using this tool, I can choose my paint tool, and I can grab my stylus and start painting. And as you can see, it's pretty cool. It's going to just look at the mesh underneath and fill this in. Now I can very easily use my brush by scaling it up by holding down B, just like if I was going to use that anywhere else. I could also remove objects. So just bring that back in and just paint those nicely. Then what else can we do? We can tell this to kind of scatter. So now it's going to scatter anything that sorry, these shapes with inside the radius of my brush. So if I make this fairly big and pull, you can see it's scattering inside of that radius, and will stay there until we fill it in. What else can we do? Scatter density, we can kind of do that, and just use the density. Now if we get close, you can actually see some of these are kind of intersecting with each other. We can turn on collide, and that will kind of make sure they don't collide with each other, but it's not perfect, but it will work. Let's just erase some of this and start over. What else can we do? Scaling. For scaling, we can hold down M and just drag and drop, and it could scale down, or we can just make them smaller to begin with, and then maybe put special ones there like that. We could also undo. So that will let us kind of control like certain points, and it also allows us to kind of rotate them around. All right. What else do we have? We can choose certain points and move them. So let's say those points. I can also grab a point and let's say rotate it. So I can manually use these. It's very nice to use. What else? All right, so let's say ID. So right now it's a fixed ID. I can now change it to, let's say, a different ID so we get a different grass type. Let's say I want to add some flowers. There we go. Let's say a different type of flower. That's very nice. Alright. So this is pretty cool. So I could randomize these. We can also put it on random. Let's just clear this out quickly. There we go. Put it on random, and I could say randomize between 0 and 2. So now, sorry, I think it's between 0 and 1. In this case, I want between the two different types of grass. I could also make this 3, so now we'll randomize between the grasses and the different flowers. There we go. This is pretty cool, the amount of control you have. Let's see, length axis. The coolest thing about this though is if I go ahead and let's say go create polygon sphere, and I now bring that out into the side. The minute I select this brush, it doesn't matter if the sphere is selected, because the minute I have the brush, and it will just find the geometry it's interested in and just paint on top of it. So it's, you don't have to load anything. But if you don't want to kind of by mistake start populating this one over here, what we can do is just grab this geo here and just drop it in there, and now this will stay locked only on the sphere. And that's about it. I mean, there's a lot more here that you can do with this. I haven't shown you half of its power. Aligned to mesh right now and so on, but it's a really cool little toy that we can use. Anyway, with that being said, I'm going to stop this section here. In the next version, we'll see, in the next scene, we'll see how to kind of populate an area and have kind of just a typical growth of objects. So we'll see, I'll see you then. All right. Alright, so in the previous video we looked at kind of a nice way to go and distribute manually our, let's say, foliage that we want. But let's say we want to create an environment that will behave more terrestrially, like if it would distribute numbers of different types of trees according to wind, time, and so on, kind of do a simulation of what would happen. You could also use height maps and whatever and whatnot. So let's just have a look at that. So let me just focus on this tree for a sec. There we go. So I'm just going to grab all of my plants here, and let's create a mesh network. And I'm going to go to the mesh and open up its attributes and make sure that instancer is on. Because if not, by default, after a certain amount of these, it will just will crash. But if it's on instancer, it won't. So just make sure it's on and go create. And we don't really need all of these. Actually, we do. Sorry. I'm going to leave about 15 of these, but I'm going to have the ground plane drive this. Now why? I basically want to take these guys here and kind of put little seedlings of the flowers on this plane. So when I apply this environmental thing, it will start off from some starting point. So I'm just going to drag and drop that in there, because once you change it to a mesh, you will have this option, and then you'll see that we actually have these little grass thingies here, and they all just like poking out. It's a little hard to see, but they're there. You know, they're small. All right, so we can now go and add our world node. And once we do that, you'll see that it's kind of cool because every single place where I had just one little seed is now grown exponentially. So I can now add some more seeds like that. And there we go. We have, you know, just better distribution. But, you know, it's just in this area and it's not really spread out. It's not taking time. So let's see what else we can do. How about, and they're like little bowls over there. So we can actually go to terrestrial ecosystem right down here. And there are other options, but let's focus on this for now. And you'll see by default, it just kind of spreads everything out pretty far out. We would kind of like to contain this to the mesh. So we're going to roll out this little option here. So it's going to roll out. Sometimes it's not, you would think that this is like part of it, but for some reason it isn't. I don't know why. It's going to roll out this, and then all I need to do is just drag and drop the surface in here, and it's going to contain it to this area. Now ecosystem age is only 40 years old, so we can actually populate the whole thing, let's say by 100, let's make this 120 years. So in 120 years, this is the amount of grass that we have, let's say, or 120 days in this case. We can randomize, we can do all kinds of things. Now, this is not where everything ends, because we can do a lot of stuff here. We can also call up different seeds to populate different areas. And to do that, we're going to use the generator. So this is the generator. And basically what it's going to do is say, well, at 120 years, have 100 seeds out. Maximum of 100 seeds. Seed age is 10, so there'll be 10 before they die out. 4, and then you got scale and all kind of these other things. So let's start off with what we got. So let's make this 200. And I will press this update button, and this should just update. We get more of these. Then we can, let's say, put 20 over here and press update and see what happens. And you'll see they're kind of far away from each other, and that's due to the scale. So if I scale this down to about 2 and redo it, we're going to get a better result. There we go. So now we're getting these patches. It's starting to look a lot better than what we had before. So now that you could actually see how these would grow out over the time. So the scale is really important, because if you know the scale of your object, we can actually get them to grow more and more close to what you expect it to. So let's make this 500 and see now. Let's make the seed age 5. Let's see now. There you go. So you're getting this much more natural spread than you would get otherwise. Now the cool thing is that we can go, I'm going to color this to, let's say, red. I'm going to actually go and add another seedling, but this time I'm going to use just an ID. So I'm going to use ID 2 and press create, and that's going to load in all the flowers. But here what I can do again is change a few things. So let's say this is maximum 5, and let's say 2, and then let's see the difference. So there's a lot less of them, so let's make that at least 10, update. So now I get one little flower there to 10 years. So let's make this 20. Alright, so we got a lot more seeds, so let's make these 5, update, and then knock this down back to 10. We might need to make the scale. Model scale is at 10. I'm gonna knock this down to about 3. There we go. That's more like it. So 5. And notice that we have it's a lot of play, really, to get the correct behavior, but we're already starting to get areas. You can see, like, in this area, the grass is basically choking the plants, the flowers. So they are getting precedent over it. Let's see, growth rate 0.1, or let's make growth rate 1 and see the difference. All right, and then we could add a new one. So let's add another one, and this time we can put 2 different ones. So we're going to put min ID 3 and 4, and generate. And that added some of the trees in there. So now we have some trees inside. We can then decide on scaling later and so on. But all in all, this is what we kind of made. So we got all these bushes with flowers come up. Now, of course, I can go in here and just grab the trees and make them a lot bigger, like that. All right, so that's kind of cool. But what if I kind of want to make a path through this? We can use a curve for that. It's pretty easy. So I'm just going to take, go create curve, and just make sure that we're here in cubic. And I'm just going to draw a curve that's going to go through there. And I'm going to go back to my world. And I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to go, let's use, I think it's the strength, let's say, input mesh, clearing, falloff. Alright, so I think it's this. Might be wrong. Let's drag and drop. Nope. Hold on. Alright, so sorry about that. Okay, so it happened to me again. It says avoid here, so you want to go to the objects to avoid. So you want to roll that down and then just drag the curve into there. And then you just want to press this button here. So that's going to update. And you want to basically play around with the fall off. So we're going to go bring that up. Now this should start to clear out everything along this curve, which it kind of is. If we go into the forest, you can see that most of the stuff is kind of clearing away. Dial down the amount of seeds. So if I'm in the forest, I'm clearing out along the curve. So I could bring this up pretty further away. Let's do that way. There we go. So now we have a path through the forest. Now, of course, it depends on how far you want to go with this. All right, I'm going to stop here, and in the next video, I'm going to show you like full terrain with this already applied to it, and we're going to look at some mapping and some more things with this, and then we'll move on to the one last thing, and we'll close this off with some texture mapping. So I'll see you in the next section. Alright, so in this video we're just going to look at how to create something very simple using, just one more node, and just to wrap this up and show you like what we can and cannot do with this lovely thing called Mesh. So to sum this up, let's have a look. So I'm just going to create a cube, and what I want to do is kind of populate this area, this sheet with little tiny cubes, and then use those to create an image. So it's fairly simple to do. I'm just going to scale this guy down and move it out a bit just so you guys can see it. We'll just throw a surface shader on this for now. And I don't know, let's make this nice shiny blue. Alright. And what we're going to do is just fill this up with these little tiny cubes. So I'm going to choose a cube and just create a mesh network. It's going to create those little dots. We're going to go to the distribute node, go to mesh, grab that plane, just drag and drop it in there, and it kind of does that, and we can, you know, just populate it this way. But I'm actually just going to throw them on every vertex and press flood, so we get this very shiny screen right here. Then let's go back to our cube. I think we can make it slightly smaller even more. So it's little tiny dots. There we go. So now we got these little tiny dots. Let's actually hide the back plane because we don't need it anymore. And I'll just make the background black by pressing Alt B. There we go. Like so. And now all I need to do is kind of tell Mesh to delete those. So to do that, I'm actually going to use a kind of cool node. Where is it hiding? It's always hard for me to find. Here it is, strength node. It used to be called the mute node, but it's now called strength. By default it opens, I think, like position, but we need the scale, so make sure that everything else is closed but the scale tab. I want to open that like that. And as you can see, I can actually just have them disappear like that. But I'm actually going to drive this with a texture. Now, to make sure that the texture is going to be sitting exactly where I want it to sit, I'm going to use a UV map. So to do that, we need a helper. So we're going to just grab that plane and drag and drop it in here. So plane 1 is here. And we're going to change that to UV. It's actually going to change automatically to UV. And then I'm just going to call up any texture that I have. In this case, it's going to be of a moose or a deer. And there we go. Isn't that cool? That is very cool. So we can do a lot of stuff. We can mess around with this a little, randomize it. I think we can even have this change over time. I'm not sure. I think we can animate it. But all in all, this is a very nice way to do it. You can actually bring in image sequences and have them run. So if you have like an animation that you made, you can have that just appear on this very nicely. And because this is 3D, you can actually see that this is cubes. So you can fly through it and so on. And with that, I'm going to show you one little thing. I want to replace where these are. And so I'm going to go to position, a transform node. Because these are instances, you can't really transform these. So you actually need to kind of create a transform node and then this create a null helper. You just right click there and you get a null, and then now we can move this up and down, left and right, anywhere in space we want. Yeah. So that's it, and with this I'm going to end this very long and very arduous video, but I think this is quite fun and it's very powerful and it's worth learning. So enjoy, you guys, and hopefully this was helpful. So see ya.